The Second World War, otherwise known as the Second World War, also known as the Second World War, or the Second World War, was a global war that lasted from 1939 to 1945. It involved the vast majority of the world's nations, including all of the great powers, which were divided into two opposing military alliances, the Allies and the Axis. At its start in 1939, the war in Europe began with the German invasion of Poland on September, following which the United Kingdom and France declared war on Germany 2 days later. After the end of World War I, the victorious Allied powers imposed harsh penalties on Germany, including territorial losses, disarmament, and economic reparations. The treaty was extremely unpopular in Germany, where it bred resentment towards the victorious powers. In addition, the worldwide economic depression of the early 1930s contributed to the rise of extremist political parties in many countries. In Germany, Adolf Hitler's National Socialist German Workers' Party, otherwise known as the Nazi Party, gained political power, and he became chancellor in January 1933. Hitler quickly established a dictatorship and set about rearming Germany, rearming the German military, and remilitarizing the Rhineland in violation of the treaty terms. He also pursued an aggressive foreign policy aimed at acquiring additional territory for Germany, beginning with the annexation of Austria in March 1938. When this failed, Hitler decided to invade Poland. On September 1, 1939, German troops crossed into Poland and began an invasion that lasted only 3 weeks. Poland's army was no match for the German war machine, and they were soon overwhelmed. The British and French, who had obligations to defend Poland, declared war on Germany 2 days later. Hitler's strategy for the defeat of France was the swift movement of his armored forces across the Ardennes forest, a region considered to be impassable, forcing the Allies to abandon their static defenses along the Maginot Line. The Germans reached Paris within 6 weeks, and France fell in early June. During the Battle of France, the British Expeditionary Force narrowly escaped the advancing Germans, leaving behind most of their equipment and retreating to the beaches of Dunkirk. While fighting in Europe, the Japanese launched a surprise attack on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, killing more than 2,000 Americans. 2 days later, the United States declared war on Japan and entered World War II. Meanwhile, in the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin had been suspicious of the partnership and had been arming for a potential war since the late 1930s. In June 1941, the Germans launched a massive surprise attack on the Soviets and rapidly advanced deep into Russian territory. Despite the huge loss of life and territory, the Soviets were able to stop the German advance and begin pushing the Germans back by the end of the year. The war in the Pacific initially saw some successes for the Japanese, who defeated the Allies in several battles, including the attack on Pearl Harbor and the Battle of the Coral Sea. However, the Allies eventually gained the upper hand and began a long and bloody campaign to liberate the Pacific Islands one by one. The island-hopping campaign culminated in the Battle of Iwo Jima and the Battle of Okinawa, which foreshadowed the coming struggle for mainland Japan. As the war in the Pacific intensified, the United States carried out 2 atomic bombings of Japan, one on Hiroshima and another on Nagasaki. The Japanese government capitulated on September 2, 1945, ending World War II. In Europe, World War II was primarily a war of attrition between Germany and the Soviet Union, with both sides suffering enormous casualties. The turning point came when the Soviet Union began receiving supplies and equipment from the United States and Great Britain through the Northern Supply Route and the Lend-Lease program. The Soviets then launched a series of devastating counteroffensives, pushing the Germans further and further west until they reached Germany itself. Meanwhile, the British and American armies advanced from the south, meeting up with the Soviets at the Elbe River in April 1945. Hitler committed suicide a few weeks later, and Germany surrendered on May. One of the most horrific aspects of World War II was the Holocaust, the systematic, state-sponsored persecution and murder of 6 million Jews by the Nazi regime and its collaborators. The Nazis believed that Jews were an inferior race that threatened the purity of the German nation and sought to eliminate them from German society. This persecution escalated during World War II as the Nazis gained control over the territories throughout Europe. Jews were confined to ghettos, then deported to concentration and death camps where they were murdered in gas chambers or worked to death. The full extent of the Holocaust was not revealed until the camps were liberated by the Allies in 1945. Another notable event of the war was the dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These attacks marked the first and only use of nuclear weapons in warfare and had a profound impact on the world. The end of World War II brought about significant changes in the global balance of power. The United States and the Soviet Union emerged as the two superpowers, setting the stage for the Cold War that would dominate the latter half of the 20th century. The war also led to the establishment of the United Nations and the beginning of decolonization movements around the world. The legacy of World War II continues to shape the world today. The war's impact on international relations, global politics, and the course of the 20th century cannot be overstated. The horrors of the Holocaust and other wartime atrocities serve as a reminder of the dangers of extremism, racism, and totalitarianism. This concludes our coverage of the main events of World War II. For more information, please visit our website or refer to other online resources such as Wikipedia and Britannica. We hope that you have enjoyed this brief overview of one of the most significant periods in human history. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more educational content.